Hello and welcome back to the Popping Podcast. So last episode, I talked about how motherhood itself can cause trauma, how that changes your brain, and how we don't talk about it. We don't have the language for it. And so I ended it with saying, okay, great, being a mother is traumatic. Why no? And so that's what I want to talk about today. And I think that one of the most important things about it is one, knowing that it even happened. So awareness. You can't change something if you're not even aware that there is an issue there or something that needs changing. So just being aware. And so then once you're aware, you start noticing things, you start noticing patterns, and you're like, oh, this trigger over here causing me to snap at my kids is probably related to the trauma that has happened. So for me, sometimes that's being like sleep. Like I was the only one that put my oldest to bed for like 2.5 years. And then even still after that, like fairly primary sleep, like putting her down for sleep. And so then things around putting kids down for sleep, if I like feel stuck in the room and stuff like that, that triggers me. So that first part, awareness, and then what's the next step after being aware? So I just want you to start paying attention to it. Don't do anything else. We don't need to overwhelm ourselves here. So just notice where a trigger happens. Try and step back as like a third party observer. Maybe you don't have to do it in the moment. That takes practice. But if you can do it in the moment, that actually helps with the stress and being able to deal with what's happening is kind of like pretending you're not the one involved. You're just kind of watching it. That's what a third party observer is. And usually the third party observer doesn't have the same emotional tie to what's happening in the moment. But that's really tricky to do, and it takes a lot of practice. So if you can do it after, that helps too. So just observe what's happening. That's part of the awareness, is you can see that you have this trigger, and then you can be like, okay, where is that coming from? What's the root of this trigger? Why is it causing me in this moment to get super, super stressed out? So for me, that trigger of walking by, if you haven't seen the first episode, I walked by where I was in the recovery room after having to be put under for my C-section. And I walked by that room and I just had like a full body, like, and I like went back after talking to the people, everything seemed kind of normal. And I went back to my car and I had to like just breathe for a little while. So having that like crazy anxiety spike, and then I was like, what is happening here? And I remember, and then I like kind of put all the pieces together. That's where I had my traumatic experience, and now my body is reacting to it. And I was able to sit there and observe. Now I had no kids yelling at me. I had no other stressors and overwhelming things happening at the same time. So I had the space to do that. And let's talk about that. So creating the space to be able to deal with these stressors. So a lot of the times we are just at and over capacity, right? That's why we snap and why we can be triggered so easily, is because we are way over capacity with everything, right? We have too much going on in our head. We have too much going on with the kids. We're touched out, overstimulated, and have no time to ourselves to recover, right? So we have like often no capacity. So that, I think, is the second step in kind of like coming back from this trauma, is learning how to create capacity so that in the moment you have that space. Like you're not up here, you're more down here, hopefully, maybe even here, but you have that space to be like, okay, this is what's happening. How am I going to deal with it? Instead of just like, and yelling or whatever it is. And I've been there. And sometimes just letting your emotions out in the moment is what can create space after. I'm going to tell a story here with my oldest daughter. So I get her to the bus in the morning. And this is a new thing for me. So September of last year, and I'm getting the kids ready in the morning by myself. We moved to a new location. My husband got a new job, so now he's gone early in the mornings. And so I am now getting the kids ready and out the door, which is fine. It's just a new experience, and it was hard, and we had to figure out a new routine. And but the bus, we have to get her there at a specific time, and if she doesn't, then she misses it, and then I have to drive, which is a whole nother complication. And so, and we never had to deal with that before. We just walked her to school. So if we were a few minutes late, it was no big deal. So getting out the door in and of itself is a trigger for me because of like childhood stuff. I felt I was always rushed. Anyway, so there's a whole other stress in there, but we've been working through that. But one day it's like between summer and spring here, and so it was kind of sunny, and so Evie was trying to decide if she wanted to wear shorts or pants. She decided shorts, and so we're out the door. We are literally out the door. She has her shoes on, and they're like high top Converse, so they take a while to tie, and drop Callum off at grandma's, and about to walk out the driveway to the bus, and she's like, I need to change. I'm like, no, Evie, we don't have time. Like, we literally have to go now. And nope, she didn't listen to me. She just ran back in the house, and I got so mad. I was so incredibly frustrated. But instead of yelling at her, like, I knew I needed to get these emotions that were like building up like this out so that I didn't snap. And when I'm this angry, I tend to start throwing things. That's just kind of how I deal with it. It's another way to get it out. And I know that really scares Evie, and it can be very destructive. So I try not to do that. But in this case, what I did is I'm not standing, but I was standing, and I like just clenched my fists like this so hard that my whole body started shaking. And then I started making this like noise, kind of like between a growl and a scream for, I don't know, it felt like for a really long time, but it was probably like 10 or 15 seconds. And I have never seen that kid move so fast in my life. She ran and got her pants on, came back and got her rubber boots on so she didn't have to like retie her shoes. And we got out the door and made it to the bus. And on the way to the bus, I said, Evie, I wasn't mad at you. Like, I was just letting my emotions out. So I wasn't like, I'm not mad now. I forget everything I said, but basically it's like, I'm not mad at you. And so we caught the bus, and we went on with her day. And I asked her after, I'm like, did that scare you? And she goes, yeah, kind of. But it wasn't like, I'm scared of my mom now. It was just like, oh, okay, she's serious. I think, I mean, she, she's 8. She doesn't really have the language to really articulate how it makes her feel. But to me, that was a healthier way to deal with it than throwing things or snapping at her. And it like showed her another way to deal with the anger. Like, it wasn't, I wasn't looking at her when I was like doing that. I was focusing elsewhere. Like, my point of that was just to get that anger out of my body so that I didn't do something I regretted later. So, and then like I said, after, I was fine. I wasn't like angry the rest of the day. I wasn't hanging on to that emotion, because that happens a lot when we repress our emotions or deal with them in an unhealthy way, is they get stuck in our body, and then that anger is still there later. And so then the next thing that happens, you're snapping again, right? And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about creating capacity and creating space. Now, the other way to do that is with breath. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, you can't calm your way to regulating your nervous system and all. I don't know. But sometimes the language they use is interesting, but I think it's more kind of clickbait, because I'm like, no, breathing isn't to like necessarily be calm. The breathing is there to create space so that you can be calm. Because sometimes I will take those big breaths and I'm still stressed. So it's true. It doesn't always work. And in that case, I wasn't breathing. I was like, it was this like very like physical, almost violent, but just like in my own body. I wasn't directing that violence out other than the noise. And so after that, I was able to breathe. So I want to talk about how our breath is often up in our chest. And so we're breathing up here, and we can't get a full breath. And often it means we're talking fast. Our anxiety is high. And if we can bring that breath down into the stomach, where we can take long, slow breaths and talk slower, then it brings that stress level down. And so learning how to do that in the moment, to regulate your nervous system so that you can hold that space for your kids, is what's going to help you not snap at them. So, and that third party observer really comes into play here. So you kind of almost remove yourself from the situation. Like, you just look at it from above, like, okay, this is happening. What am I going to do about it? So you give yourself the room to think that. And it comes from practice. It's not an easy fix. It's not a magic pill. But going back to the awareness, if you don't know that like what's going on, now you're not aware to be able to fix it. If you don't know how to do anything to fix it, then it's just going to stay the same. So this step of like taking a second, taking a breath, and then coming back to your child from that, or whoever, it doesn't have to just be your child, coming back to your child just a little bit less stressed, right? And then eventually it's a little bit more less stressed, a little bit more less stressed. And eventually that gap between your capacity and what you're actually operating at gets bigger. And part of what helps me in these situations, so I would say a lot of my stressors at this point specifically with the kids, are like getting them places on time, because the 2-year-old doesn't want to listen and the 8-year-old gets distracted really easily. And so I found that being like, it's time to get out the door and I'm breathing up here, is not useful. It just makes them stressed, which then makes them respond in a stressed way, which then heightens your stress, and it just makes everybody go up, 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 up. And so even though I have that, like, oh, I need to get everybody out the door, being able to take that breath. Okay, what happens if I don't get everybody out the door in time? Okay, I've got a plan B. We can drive them to school if necessary. Not the best scenario, but it's a possibility. And then I can be like, okay, these kids are just being kids. I need to stay calm so that then they will listen better, because kids especially don't listen well in a stressed state. And just, again, bringing it back to that breath, feeling it up here, and then being able to bring it down to the stomach. And I have found that talking slower helps with that, because you have more time to breathe when you're talking slower. One time I was by myself in the car driving somewhere, and I was like, I'm gonna be late. And I just started talking to myself, but I talked in slow motion like this. And it literally, like, I could feel my anxiety like slowly dropping the longer I was talking slow. And I've used it other times, and it works, because what's happening is you've got this story going on in your head and it's moving a million miles a minute. And if you can, one, get it like out of your head. So what I was saying, I was like, I'm going to get there on time. Like, it sounds really funny doing it, but, and just like kept saying things like that instead of what was going on in my head, like, oh, I'm never gonna make it on time. And can you see the difference of how, like, one is more calm, even though I didn't feel calm? But then between that and the slower breathing, it brought the anxiety down. And then I felt it creeping up again, and I would talk slow again and breathe slow again. And eventually it kind of just stayed down. And this is what I mean with the repetition. We always talk about getting in the reps. So if you get frustrated because it's not working and you're like, Rachel, your theory doesn't work, it's because you haven't put it into place enough. And maybe we need to go back to more of the awareness and then back to the breathing before it really starts to land. And I've got to say, I've been doing this longer than September, but like specifically with the kids and getting them out the door, like I noticed a really big difference, like a couple, maybe even like just a month ago, where I forget exactly what happened, but like it was something that would have like just sent me through the roof. And I did that. I just stopped and I'm like, okay, this is not as big of a deal as I am making it out to be. Took that deep breath, and then like came back and started talking from that place. And I do this when the kids are hurt or have like something crazy happen. They're screaming. Like, it's much easier at that point because I'm not the one hurt. I'm not like involved other than being their comforter. But I've done this already before I learned this trick for like other things, just like breathing into my belly and holding them and just sort of imagining that like slow, low frequency enveloping us. And it calms them down like almost instantly, which is insane to me. But it's easier from that place, like I said, because you're not, it's the third party thing again. So basically it's like just training your brain to be able to take that step back. And the more you do it, the bigger your capacity is going to be. Now, there are other, that I would say is like the easiest thing to implement immediately. There are other ways. Like if you're like, this is still like, I'm still struggling here, I would highly recommend therapy. So as a like really newly postpartum mom, I would say that's really hard to do because you already have all of this other stuff. You've got all the appointments for the baby. You've got like, you're learning something new. To then try and find a therapist is like an astronomical task. So maybe like asking somebody to help you find a therapist. And I want to like acknowledge here that like finding somebody that you trust to like give all your shit to, like that's hard. That's hard on a good day, right? So to do that postpartum is hard. Honestly, I didn't do it, and I think I was like 3 or 4 years postpartum, and I was like starting to have intrusive thoughts, and I was like, okay, this is not cool. But I had way more capacity then at 4. Like my daughter was 4 years old. Like I didn't have a second kid then, and I got therapy, and it was awesome. Like she gave me techniques, she validated what I was going through, and just having somebody else to talk to that's not your partner. They don't understand it. They can't because they're not going through it. And even if they have gone through it, it could be different. Their experience could be different. If, say, your partner is a female who's also had a baby, I would say that that's probably like an easier way to talk to somebody else. But again, they're like more, they're not an unbiased third party, right? There's stuff, there's baggage, like it's not going to be the same. So being able to talk to somebody that's totally outside of your like circle is incredibly helpful. But I understand that that's a big barrier to a lot of people. Like payment, I know it's covered for some people in Canada, but not a lot of places and not all people. But that is something I would recommend. The other thing is there's lots of practices. I haven't done a lot of them. Honestly, meditation and the breathing is like what I've done. There's NLP, that's neuro linguistic programming. I know that's worked for people. There's tapping. I don't know if that's the same as NLP. There's different names that are the same thing. That's where you're tapping on different like meridian points. That could work for you. One of the things that I found really interesting was craniosacral therapy, and it has to do with like eye movement and stuff like that. And so it's like, to me that makes sense because it's more closely related to the brain. But again, that's not something I have like done enough of to like speak to. There's somatic therapy, so that's moving your body in specific ways so that you can move the stored trauma. So to me, that like thing that I did, that would be somatic therapy to me. But it's not something I've done like specifically somatic therapy training. But I do feel like that's super stuff like that's super helpful, like going and screaming in a pillow, or like in the bathroom doing that thing. If you don't want to do that in front of your kid, like just go close the door and go like let it out. Pushing on like going to a door frame and pushing on the door. So that's like that tensing of your muscles is, I have found, super helpful for like letting that anger and emotion out. That's something also I wanted to talk about is like postpartum depression often comes with rage. And maybe you don't have depression, but just the rage. Like that is a huge thing in motherhood, is the rage. And I don't think we talk about it a lot. I'm seeing it talked about more often now, but it's a crazy thing where you're like, this is not who I am. Like, I'm not this angry normally. Like, what the fuck? So that is part of the trauma. Like, we've seen this in specifically, I have seen this because my husband's a football nerd. There's lots of research now with NFL players and concussions and hockey players too, and they're just like these normal people, and then all of a sudden they have like beaten their wives or killed their wives, and everybody's like, what? Like, that's not them. And that's concussions and trauma. And so back to that, if I talked about this in the first, like my first video about this, is the psychological brain injury, totally unseen, not talked about, right? And that, I think that is really what is causing the rage in moms, is this trauma, and it's creating this new person, and we don't know why. And so now we're frustrated. And so this is like, again, back to the awareness piece. It's like, okay. And also, you're not alone. I see this on lots of threads, the mom rage, and this like, and then the quick to snapping at the kids and all this, and then feeling incredibly guilty after, because you're like, that isn't me. So yeah, back to the awareness. Like, that's a huge first step in learning how to figure out your trauma and do something about it to now like change what's happening. And I like, just the awareness piece isn't, I don't think it's not a super overwhelming first step. So just remembering to do it and just getting the reps in like that. We always talk about reps with fitness, and I'm starting to hear it with other things too, like get in the reps. And it's so true, is like really just practicing it, and eventually you'll start to see the results. Unfortunately, I haven't found a really like fast way to do this. But if you think about it too, that trauma has been probably stored there for a very long time. So it makes sense. Like over the years, it's built up, and when it hasn't been processed, then it continues to compound, right? So it makes sense that it won't disappear in a couple minutes, couple days. Like, it's probably going to take a few months, but it's possible. It's doable. And just get curious about it. That's the part of awareness that makes it a bit easier, is like, don't judge yourself. Remember, I was talking about the stories in your head, right? I'm always like, oh, you like that was so stupid. Like, why are you doing that? And being able to, like, when you get curious, you then have the space to be able to be like, oh, well, what if I started talking about it like this? Like when I was in the car, I was like, no, I'm going to get there on time. Everything is going good. Like, telling ourselves those stories instead of the, oh, I'm never going to make it on time. Like, this isn't going to work. Instead of telling those stories and flipping it to the positive stories, it really helps with rewiring that into your brain. So bringing that awareness part, and then the breath part to increase the capacity, and And then building on that with your stories that are positive instead of negative. And then all of that together over time is what will help you rewire your brain to then just that's going to be more your default instead of what's happening now. And I've seen this in other things too, where little things trigger me, like sticky scissors. I don't know if people have seen that reel on my Instagram, but it drives me nuts. And it used to like derail my day. And now I am able to be like, okay, Rachel, this is just a trigger. Like, you don't have to make a story about it in this moment. And so I kind of laugh at myself and then I'm over it instead of it literally ruining my day. And there's other little things like that I've noticed since like really doing this again in September with the whole like bus to school thing, like that, but like now I'm using it in other areas of my life as well. And doing that has really increased capacity overall, because now, all those little stressors build up, whether it's the kids or whether it's stuff at the house and whether it's your partner and whatever it is, stuff at work, like doing one thing, just seeing or like doing the one thing, say with the kids on the bus, like it compounds because now you do it in every area of your life that triggers you. And so that is really where you see it start to compound, and you get that compound interest on your work, is that it really affects all areas of your life in a very positive way. I hope this video has been helpful. I feel like I've kind of gone all over the place, but to recap, it's like bringing that awareness to what's going on and then being able to breathe and slow your breathing down, bring it down into your belly, and also slow your thoughts down, like get it out, like saying it out loud slow. That helps slow your breathing down. Doing those two things together help increase your capacity, and then it compounds over time, and you'll notice it affecting all areas of your life and then being able to increase your capacity. And once you see that increased capacity, this thing, so you're not always up here, not always, you'll still get up there, right? Like it'll still happen, but you come back down here so much quicker once you've built that capacity, right? So it slowly goes down, but then the more you do it, the bigger your capacity gets, and then the easier it is to bring yourself back down. If you found this helpful, go give me a follow on Instagram or TikTok or both. I'm at Hey Rachel Brooks. I will link those below. You can also book a call with me. I am calling them clarity calls right now, but I feel like they're very much more than that. They're more of a support call. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I've dealt with this. I've had a lot of experience with this. And one of my gifts is being able to, I hear people talking, literally you just talk to me about what's going on. And I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here, and I link it here. I see patterns. And so then I am able to give that clarity back to you, reflect that back to you. So if you found this helpful and you're like, I want more, book one of those calls with me. I am happy to help. They are totally free. I have longer support systems, 3 months of small group coaching, so 2 to 4 people. So you're with 2 to 4 other moms. You create a community together and work through all this stuff together. It's super important as moms to have that community. I know it's really hard to get, but yes, the first step is to book a call, and then if you're interested in that, we can go from there. But there's no pressure on the call for that. I am going to wrap it up here. The kids are coming in. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.